Tell me, why do you cry? Are you in mourning, or is it just mourning? Does the sunrise shine awareness on the darkness that surrounds you like a barless prison of your own creation? A reminder that you're sealed in a box that no one can see, of which, ironically enough, you are the ceiling? But you're not alone. There's a demon lying dormant inside, but there's nowhere to hide, and only escape can be your saving grace. So now, you wait. For when you start to move and find a groove, the inevitable stumble and eventual fall sits you right back down in the corner you've aptly named home. You call it home because you've lived there for years, blanketed in fear, paralyzed with the monster near. The exit is in your reach, but that threshold you just can't breach because once again, you're in your own way. On a journey, but the path's unclear, you have the drive but just can't steer, so in this box is where you will stay. So once again, in this mirror I speak, wearing a mask so strong, with a soul so weak, I ask again, why do I cry? Am I in mourning, or is it just mourning? The answer is yes. So another day in this prison I'll be, and I can't run and hide where the monster can't see, because the painful truth is, the monster is me. Now, I wrote that a while ago. What about you guys? Do you guys ever feel like you're the monster that you're afraid of? If so, well then you're in the right place. My name is Randy, and this is a memoir from my broken brain. Every story has a beginning, and if we're going to be spending this much time together, I figured it was time for you to hear mine. Just like every hero has an origin story, well, so does every villain. And if you would have asked me, like 10 years ago, which side of the fence I landed on, I'd most likely answer as the villain. Don't get that confused with me stating the answer of villain. What I mean is, I would have answered villainously. I would have painted myself as the hero of my story, so I could slither my way in to get what I needed out of the exchange. And if that wasn't going to work, I could just as easily play the victim in that same story. Now, some people, including me, would call this narcissistic, but I called it survival. The unfortunate truth is that it was almost impossible for me to see the humanity in my relationships. Instead, every relationship, sometimes every conversation, contained an underlying aspect of commoditization. And sometimes that prize would be saving face, or gaining sympathy, or being the hero of a situation, thus obligating the completion of that transaction. This is objectification in its truest form. It's not like when people say it regarding the obnoxious manner by which people show their appreciation of physical attractiveness inappropriately, which I, of course, have been guilty of as well. But when every encounter you have is seen as a transaction, even subconsciously, people then truly become objects that dispense the prize you're working for. And that is the reality of my survival. It's also the reality of an addict. But how did this brain of mine break? Was I born broken? Did it get shattered along the way? Which brings up the question, was it nature or was it nurture? I'm still not sure. But it definitely has been a crazy ride so far. And now that I've painted myself as a complete asshole, which, I'll give that to you. I was for quite some time. But let's just find out how I got there. My mom was 16 years old when she had me. And my biological father was not in the picture for very long. I was too young to really remember the actual leaving. But there was something about it that birthed this core belief inside me. And this I remember quite well because it carried on with me for my entire life. And that belief was that something about me was wrong. Something in me made someone else choose to not have me. That was rough. That was quite painful. And it really was the foundational belief that carried me on through my early childhood, into my teens, even in my young adulthood. Now, all that being said, I didn't grow up without a father figure in my life. My dad, whom I call dad, who is the only father I've ever truly known, took over when I was about 3 years old. But he was a kid too himself at the time. So being the only child of really young parents, I learned how to become self-sufficient at a really early age. I was always told that I was easily entertained and I knew how to entertain myself. Really what that was is a concoction of a lot of alone time plus a high intellect. Thank you very much. And that brewed this imagination within me, which could be a good thing, but it has also proven to be not so good thing either. But that high intellect, I'm not sitting here trying to stroke myself off, talking about me, but I taught myself how to read when I was about 4 years old. I learned the alphabet and the sounds that each letter made, and I essentially took that knowledge, sat down with Fox and Socks, and just didn't stop until I learned how to read the fucking thing. And I went and showed my parents, and I have a very vague memory of this. I don't know. It could be this imagination that I was just talking about, but I have this memory of being like, hey, I know how to read. I can read this book. And I got the response, that a normal parent would give a 4-year-old, like, oh, yeah, okay, Randy, I'm sure you can, let's hear it. And then I read the shit. And it was met with some pretty high praise. And this carried into, my preschool. And in preschool, this ability to perform highly in an academic setting was seen, and it was actually recommended that I start doing more challenging work. And I hope that I'm not bullshitting this too much. I'm sure when my mom hears this, she'll correct me if anything's off. But I started doing like first grade homework in preschool, which was cool. It felt good to be smart, but it also created this opportunity for me to put an unhealthy amount of pressure on myself to perform. And this is also something that I carried with me through my young childhood, into my teenage years, into my adult life. And it's something I still have now. To be honest, we're, about 3 minutes into this podcast, and I've probably taken about 45 minutes to get here. Perfectionism. Yeah, this need to be able to perform. This is something that actually created a lot of anxiety within me. And I am an anxious person by nature. Or by nurture, I don't know, we'll see. And this carried into every activity that I had as a kid, right? Because the worst thing for me in life, not chopping my own foot off, not falling off a building, the worst thing in my life would be for somebody, somewhere, for some reason, to be mad at me or to not like me, I guess is the more accurate description. This actually took over in, like I said, all my activities, including sports. I was a pretty athletic kid, meaning I was good at the sports that I played. I actually developed an unhealthy relationship with food at a young age. I believe, knowing what I know now about how my broken brain works, I believe that this was the first thing that I knew would shut off the amygdala, that the little fear nugget, the little reptile brain in my head that was constantly keeping me in fear and in pain and anxious. And I started to gain weight. I started to gain weight at a young age, and this was a self-fulfilling prophecy in a lot of ways. See, one thing that you should know about my dad is that he is, don't let him fucking ever hear me say this out loud, by the way, so don't tell him if you see him. He is one of the, I'm doing air quotes, but I guess I really don't even have to, coolest dudes that I know. And one of the problems with having a really cool dad is putting the expectation on yourself to try to be as cool as him. And, my dad was a killer athlete. He's a stud baseball player. He got all the girls when he was younger. And these were traits that enhanced his life. At least according to him, they enhanced his life. Therefore, those were values that I should hold as well. I'm sure some of it was taught, some of it was influenced, but a lot of it was created on my own, right? In my eyes, In order for me to be cool like my dad, I had to be great at sports and I had to get lots of girls. Well, when I started putting on a little weight, it was made very apparent to me that that's not how you get girls. That is not, that's not the picture perfect poster portrayal of attractive physical traits that lead to desire and companionship from the opposite sex. I wouldn't say that I was necessarily bullied, but it was something that I can tell affected my personal relationships 100%. And I was reminded at home here and there too that I had been gaining weight, and it basically just perpetuated the cycle. I would just eat, gain weight, feel like shit, eat, gain weight, feel like shit, But going back to not wanting anyone anywhere to not like me, what I would do in order to combat that was I developed this very brash, very straightforward, and to be perfectly honest, pretty raunchy sense of humor. I was always telling jokes. I was always poking fun at myself. I was always poking fun at people. I was the funny guy, right? Because if I couldn't be blessed with the looks that were getting all the girls, God damn it, I was going to be funny. Because somehow, some way, I was going to make people like me. And you know what? I got pretty good at it too. But being the fat funny guy doesn't equal getting all the girls' attention. And so that perpetuated this kind of slow burning self-hatred that I had for myself. But then something magical happened. When I was 8 years old, I was no longer an only child. My little sister Rachel was born. This is another one, don't tell her I said this. But I loved that little girl with all of my being. And a new identity kind of birthed at this point, and that was the role of the protector, the older brother. And it gave my life a different purpose for the time being. When she was little, she was a pain in the ass. She's actually still a pain in the ass, but I love her. And she would only be calm with me. She also didn't speak English for most of her life, speech impediment and whatnot. But she's fine now, by the way. She would speak in this language that only I could understand. And so I had to be, the translator, and I was the one who can make her laugh. I was the one who can, that wanted to spend a bunch of time with her. And this new identity felt good. So good that I actually started standing up for other people as well. And it's something that I still do today. I'm not saying that I'm Batman, but all I'm saying is that you've never seen me and Batman in the same room together. So take that as you will. But shortly after this period of time, something not so magical happened. I ran into some trauma that I will not get into today, but stay tuned for the trauma episode. It's going to be a blast. After that, it seemed like this weighted cloak of darkness kind of landed on my shoulders. And that warrior mode, that protector mode, that feel good, that purpose quickly deflated. And it was something that I knew I couldn't tell anybody, because if I were to tell people, 1, I would no longer be cool. 2, I would be looked down upon. And 3, well, it was fucking embarrassing. So shut the fuck up. How about that? No, but I was already the quote unquote poor brown boy in the rich white school, in elementary school. We didn't have a lot of money, but it wasn't something that I really ever knew or felt. My fat ass just loved macaroni and cheese and Kool-Aid, and that was on tap almost any time I wanted it. So it was all good. No, but like I was saying, moving forward, things were different. I was different. And I had learned, unfortunately, shortly after this point, that I was able to inflict some of the pain that I felt onto others through my anger, whether it be the words I said, or on occasion, the physical schoolyard fights. It was one of those things that at the time, if you got into a bunch of fights, one, nobody would mess with you anymore. And two, it wasn't really looked down upon. Even at home, it was more of the, if you get in a fight at school and you get in trouble, as long as you didn't start the fight, you won't be in trouble at home kind of thing. So I took that and was able to use my anger as armor, right? Because feeling scared, feeling anxious, feeling sad and in pain, those emotions were a lot harder for me to deal with than anger. Anger was almost justified. It was almost righteous, right? If I could be a Billy Badass, then that feels a lot more manageable than the scared, sad little fat boy. That carried me through my the rest of elementary school. And then in 7th grade, I actually changed districts. And this was fan-fucking-tastic for me because now I got to go to a new school in a new district. So nobody knew the real me, the old me, right? Nobody knew the me from elementary school. I got a new chance to be whoever I wanted. And I took that and ran with it. I was about 7th grade when I first started doing what every 11-year-old boy does, right? Start smoking pot and chasing after girls? No? Nobody else? Just me? Oh, well. Yeah, I started doing that. Got my first set of real quote-unquote homies. The friends that lived in my neighborhood. The friends that I would then grow up with, outside of sports. Because my sports friends, that's a completely different family than, my running around getting in trouble friends. And junior high actually wasn't so bad for me, other than the fact that I was constantly pigeonholed into this funny fat guy role, which I still carried with me because I wasn't going to give them an opportunity to know the real sad me. I was going to put on my funny face and put this mask on of being the party starter, right? The one who's going to say the most ridiculous shit, the one who's going to do the most ridiculous shit with no filter, no regard for anything or anyone, especially someone's feelings, right? The more shit that I could talk to somebody, the more titanium my armor became. That sounds fucking lame. Basically, you can go ahead and try your luck and talk shit to me, but I'm going to talk shit right back and I'm going to be better at it than you. And in that rare occasion that I'm not better at it than you, we're going to fucking fight and I will be better than you at that. And so this was the core of my identity through junior high school. And then move into high school, I still really was chasing after the desirability factor, right? I have a group of friends, and even a group of friends that I still have today, who are a little more blessed, at least in my opinion, in the regard of they get seen, they get desired kind of thing. I always had to work for it. It made me really good at certain things, but I always had to work for it, and I resented that in myself and in others. Anyways, I still loved hard. I still had a big heart, and I still really devoted all of my energy into finding companionship from the opposite sex. And it just wasn't there. It wasn't there for me. That was not something that was in the cards for me in high school until fast forward to being 16 years old, and I finally found it. I finally hit the fucking jackpot. I found someone who desired me. The only problem was this relationship was an inappropriate one, as the woman involved was a few years older than me. It was even more inappropriate because she was also a friend of my parents who was babysitting my sister at the time. We kept this relationship under wraps for obvious reasons, and when it came to light, all fucking hell broke loose, as it should have. And I'll, of course, to protect the people involved, will not give any details on exactly what happened. But in my 16-year-old lovesick brain, my parents took away the only person I had encountered in my life who actually desired me. Well, now it's fucking on, right? Now, if I was jaded before, I'm fucking shattered at this point. What my brain had created to be love actually turned out to be a product of addiction. She had something I wanted, I had something she wanted, and that was essentially it when you boil it all down. There's that commoditization I was talking about earlier. But to find out that that's all it was, that was earth shattering. Now, this whole situation sent me into a depression that was really alarming for everybody in my life. I became completely detached from my daily life. I was either crying, screaming, or writing. I felt dead inside. This is where I really learned how to self-medicate. I was taken to a psychiatrist and put on medication. And as the dosages kept climbing, I felt like I was losing more and more of me. So, like the fucking genius that I am, discontinued the medication on my own. This was obviously not good for me, and I just began to self-medicate more. I was in high school, but I was still out drinking all the time, partying with friends, behaving inappropriately, and this was now my life. I was the guy who would go out and party. I was the guy who would get into fights. I was the guy who would treat people like shit because it was funny. I had such a polarizing personality. You would either love me or hate me. It was either, oh, fuck yeah, there's Randy, we're going to have a good time tonight, or, oh, this fucking asshole, right? That was me. And after I graduated high school, got my own place, graduated on a Thursday, moved out that weekend, started work Monday. The cycle kept replaying, and I then just drank every single day. I thought that I was just partying. I thought I was just having fun. But it turns out that I was just trying to numb myself because I didn't feel good. I had a lot of things inside me that were not resolved. And I lacked the willingness or the knowledge or the guidance to work on those things. Fast forward to 20 years old. I actually met my now wife. We met at a house party. We had a group of mutual friends, but we had never met. And I knew from the second I met her that she was going to be my next obsession. And I mean that in the best, worst of ways. I knew that I needed to get close to her. I needed to get to know her. I needed to just be with her. And so I did. I pursued that relationship, and it was absolutely crazy, especially at first. Getting to know someone brand new. For someone like me, that was a huge step for all the wrong reasons, because I didn't like me, and I didn't give people the real me. And the last person who even got the smallest glimpse of the real me used it to essentially destroy me. And so I knew I couldn't let that happen again, but I knew that I really, really wanted to. And she's got her own story to tell, and I hope that I can line her up for an interview. I guess my people have to get in touch with her people and see if we can arrange a time, because she's a busy woman. But our relationship, without getting into too much detail here, it was birthed in turmoil, if you will. Birthed in turmoil, birthed from turmoil. It was fucking nuts. We were crazy, we were young, we were dumb. We were living really fast. We were really unhealthy, and we treated people really unhealthily. And it ultimately resulted in us losing our home, me leaving a job. I blame me leaving this job on someone else, because that's what I used to do best, blame things on everybody else. But really what it was is that I just didn't want to live the normal person life anymore. I couldn't get up and go to work just to come home and live hellishly. And things were going really bad. Really, really bad. I end up getting some correspondence with some family from my biological father. On my biological father's side. In Alaska. Fucking Alaska. After some phone calls exchanged and some letters written, I had felt like it was time to hit the pause button on life and run away. And at 21 years old, my, at the time, girlfriend and I decided to pick up on a moment's notice and move to Alaska. Let me tell you, Alaska was fucking crazy. I have some stories too that I can probably share about Alaska that, we'll discuss at a later time. But when we got to Alaska, I got to meet my biological father pretty much for the first time that I can at least remember. And this fool is a peculiar duck, let me tell you. I immediately learned that he was just as fucking broken as I am. And it was one of those things where when I refer back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode, I felt like he had a debt to pay to me, and I treated him as such. I used him, I used his home, I made him buy things, give me money. I treated him like utter shit because, in my head, he deserved it. And I deserved retribution. And that's, of course, not how I like to live, and I've had to live with how I contributed to that burning of that relationship. Now, in the midst of all this craziness, something amazing did happen. We found out that we were pregnant. Well, we weren't pregnant. I can't carry a baby. I don't know how much you guys know about science, but from the last thing I read, I haven't read anything in a long time. Who knows? Maybe I could be pregnant at this point. But no, I wasn't pregnant. My then girlfriend was pregnant. And we both had jobs. We were both working. Things were going pretty well until they weren't. And the true nature of people started showing. Our true nature started showing. And as it was getting closer to when the baby was going to be born, both my girlfriend and I had decided that California is where home is. That's where all of our family is, and that's where we wanted to have the baby. So we came back, and shit went from bad to worse, essentially. At this point, her and I were both headfirst in our addictions, and we treated everybody around us as such. Now, I don't know how many of you guys have any experience with addiction, but you tend to live moment by moment in search of that release. And whoever you have to hurt, whoever you have to cheat, whoever you have to steal, whoever you have to take advantage of, you do. Because you need that release, that reprieve, that moment of numbness to take away from the pain. We were young kids with a baby, no money, and it was tough, to say the least. Thinking about it now, I really do want to have a good conversation on mic for you guys with my wife, because our story is pretty fantastic. Now, again, I will not divulge too much of her story. I'll let her do that. But my now wife did get to a point where she was in enough pain to where she made a change. And she changed her life around. She got healthy. I didn't. Instead, I allowed myself to continue with my ways. And all it did was cause pain for myself, for my family, for my relationship. And I wasn't able to be present as a partner, as a father, until I finally got to the point where I was in enough pain to where I needed to change. And all hell broke loose there. All of my secrets came to the surface. All the things I lied about. All the times I cheated people. All the times I cheated my wife. All of it came to the surface. And I still believe to this day that there was a large part of me that was buried deep inside that kind of left breadcrumbs as a trail to get to this point. Since I didn't have the power in myself to enforce change, I needed help in doing so. And my wife, who is an absolute angel of a person, kicked me the fuck out of the house. Like, it was bad, right? And it was well deserved. But the fact that she is an angel of a person and the fact that she can empathize with the plight of an addict, she actually was the one who was like, look, fool, you need to fucking do something, because you're gonna kill yourself. Like, this is stupid. And I'm not gonna stand around and watch you do it. But if you want to get help, I can show you how. And I took that advice, right? I was floating in the ocean, essentially. Just drifting away on a life raft. Until I finally found somebody who threw me a rope. And I clung onto that rope, pulled myself to shore. And I've been relearning how to live life in a different way. That's essentially the story, in a nutshell, of how I got here. Now, I left out a few key details as to the nature of my addiction, the depths of it, and some pretty specific information as to how deep my pit was, but I figured that would be better spent on another episode. So I guess that covers the nurture side of my story, which leads me back to the question that I asked at the beginning of the episode. Was my journey into my addiction a product of nature, or was it a product of nurture? Now, I'm not in the business of telling other people's stories, but I will just give a brief list of the nature side of this. Many in my family have a history of alcoholism. Biological father may never admit it, but I can see he is afflicted with a few different addictions. My mother, recovering alcoholic, and actually a large portion of my biological father's side were alcoholics as well. Had an aunt die from alcoholism or health issues related to alcoholism. So I definitely have the addict blood in my family. I know I mentioned in the first episode that I have some years of self-improvement and recovery from the old ways that I used to live. And all this is true. And that's essentially what I wanted to do with this podcast, is I wanted to be able to show whoever might have been where I've been, or have seen what I've seen, or gone through what I've gone through, or are currently going through some of that shit, that there is a way to find who you were born to be. And we don't see the world like most people do, right? We have to relearn how to connect with human beings. We have to relearn how to connect with the world around us. But when we do, it's sweet. It is absolutely magic when it happens. And it all starts with learning how to love yourself. I spent my entire life knowing that I didn't love myself. And so what I did was I chose to be someone else. And me choosing to be someone else ultimately was a nail in the coffin for the me I was born to be. But thankfully, I'm surrounded with so much love, and I'm actually willing to see it and receive it now, that I was able to climb out of that pit, and I'm able to look at myself in the mirror and just love me, you know? It's not perfect. I don't love me every day. You know, sometimes I'll eat a couple double-doubles, and then I'll look at my gut, and I'll be like, motherfucker, this is nasty, right? But then there are days where I see a situation, or I'm in a situation rather, that I would have reacted negatively to in the past. And I do something different. And it's these moments that I live for. It's these moments of growth that make me realize that all the pain that I had caused in my life, all the pain that was inflicted on me, it was all worth it. I wouldn't wish it on anybody else. That's for damn sure. But it was all worth it. Because without that, without smashing my face against the bottom, I would have never known the true joy of the light. I would have never known the beauty of true love for myself, for other people, and for you guys listening. And so this was all over the fucking place. I don't even know if any of this is listenable. I don't know if any of this was intelligible. I don't know what the fuck I'm even trying to say anymore. I don't know if any of this episode made sense. This one is completely unscripted. I just wanted to kind of jump on, and if people are going to be listening to this and people are going to be like, well, who the fuck is this guy? Like, why am I even going to be listening to this shit from him? Kind of want to let you know where I'm coming from. Now, in future episodes, I will get into a lot more detail about certain aspects of my story that may seem pretty vague, which they are, but for good reason. This is just, the mozzarella sticks at Claim Jumper. This is just the appetizer. This is just the first part. You're not getting the ribeye yet. Stay tuned, and you will. Basically, this is the story of a young boy who was born hating himself, climbing from the darkness to reach a point where he can look in the mirror and honestly say, I love you, dude. And if you haven't stopped and looked in the mirror and said, I love you, dude, what the fuck you waiting for?